Hi. The toasts
How's it
have
going, Xanthi?
increased. It's going well. How are you, Robert? Welcome,
Oh,
everyone. How are you? Tell me.
it's always a good day whenever I'm able to do a show with you and be with the folks watching in. So,
Okay.
um, yeah, I mean it's well
Welcome,
first,
everyone in the chat. Yes, George, Grimskull, Sersting, and
hey everybody, thanks for joining us. It's yeah, it'll be a hoot. Uh, you know I know
what?
like Mike will give me a hard time later just because my any
Mike who?
sayings and stuff
Oh
is
no!
like off of.
Spoiler alert. No, it's okay. So, welcome everyone. Today we have a great show, right? And a few episodes ago, we went back to the 90s. And I guess today's show is kind of related to that. And it's a special show because we have a guest.
Yep.
And you want to do the honors in introducing our guest? Like
Oh
you
sure.
kind of said the name.
I have it in and know the guy. Oh yeah, sure.
Yes.
So like Xanthi mentioned, like '90s. One of the I think films that we talked about was like some of the work that Kevin Smith has done, and just remember a good friend of mine, Michael Toole, who's known for his wordsmith, podcast, an artist. Done a lot of work you can find on the socials and online, and thought it'd be a great guest to come in, not only to kind of like geek out with him about Kevin Smith, but also I thought it was kind of neat just because we raised a point when we were talking off camera just about some of the things Kevin Smith has done that I think is just help reinvent himself when he moved from one medium to another, as well as how he positions himself. But before I go into the program
Before
and just
you
kind of
go
spill the
there,
beans, let's bring
exactly.
our guest Michael Toole there. So Mike,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to warp you in here, so hopefully I didn't blow anything up here.
Hey man,
Hello.
am I
Hi,
warped in? I
welcome.
always I watch your show. Like I've been watching the clips and stuff, and Robert's talent is like those weird transitions and little
Yeah.
animations you have in
Where
there.
is it now, Robert? I mean,
I,
so
I
it's
think I,
okay.
I
I'm
think I pulled out
joking.
one of the
I
conductor
saw you
coils or
guys
something
are
like
like
that.
you're the toast of the town because there's actual like toast that pops up on Pop Goes the
Oh,
Stream. So
oh,
Yeah,
is it an
it's
expression?
sometimes like if
Oh,
I
okay.
burn it takes a little while to get the burnt smell out of the toaster. So luckily it's all digital, so people won't have
Mm,
that burning smell when they watch us.
mm.
yeah, that's right. They haven't. We're not there yet with the technology, but I'm always impressed.
No, it's
I'm,
on that
I'm impressed.
advanced.
I'm
Mm.
impressed with you, Robert, because people who don't know. I mean, you and I go back now at least like 10 years now doing stuff at the um, in the New England area, Brookline, cable access TV, right? You
Yep.
were doing a lot of video production stuff there, and I was doing a lot of video production stuff too with probably one of my best friends, Lawrence Holly, who was the studio manager at the time, right? And you did, fell in, did some
Yep.
stuff with Lawrence too. So tell him the Kevin Smith fandom and that part of the story. And Lawrence is a big thing because he and I did a lot of different video productions together. We did our film festival, our experimental eel film festival that Robert was a part of. Yeah, I think he showed a clip or two in there, and then Lawrence and I went on to do the Experimental Eel podcast, where we interview a lot of local artists in the New England area. Here in the States, I know Xanthi, right? Sweden, so it's like an international affair
Yes.
now. So,
Yeah.
so
True.
and Kevin Smith has became big into podcasting, like you say, Robert, when he's reinventing himself
Yep.
from films, but and then like Xanthi was talking about the '90s, kind of a '90s icon too for Generation X. And I'm a little bit younger than that, but yeah, I just always I think I've been a fan of Kevin's stuff for almost 20 years now. Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, where there's all kinds of references to his earlier films in there, and yeah, just went to a lot of different Kevin Smith related events with Lawrence, different road trips. Like we're in Boston, Mass. So for people who don't know, like that's only like 4 hours or so from Boston is New Jersey, which Kevin was from New Jersey, references New Jersey a lot in his films, especially the early View Askew universe. films. And yeah, so it's always cool. We got to go, for this first movie, Clerks. He shot it in his convenience store that he worked in, and we got to actually go. And the Quick Stop convenience store is still there. You can go and see how small, and it really is a shitty convenience store. Like, it's true to life. And he kind of became known for putting a lot of real life references. Truth is kind of stranger than fiction, pulling stuff from his life and putting it into his movies and stuff. And yeah, you can see the store, you can see the Quick Stop, and then he has his comic book store, Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash. See, the comic book store is not too far away from there. Leonardo, New Jersey, and then is where the Quick Stop is, and the comic book store is in Red Bank. So you can find all of these different locations. Like, if you're a fan of that stuff, it's like, imagine if, like, I saw you guys talk to the Kessel Chat guys with
Right.
Star Wars. Imagine you could go to Hoth or Endor, or you could actually go to the places. So it really, as a fan, it kind of like endears you more, and there's this real community, and especially the online community, because I think Kevin was big like in the 90s. It was really just him, and I think you would say, like, John August, like, the screenwriter who still shares a lot of his screenwriting information out now. But there were only a few filmmakers at the time that were really accessible on the internet. And Kevin's, View Askew Productions, his production company, they had viewaskew.com, and you could go there, go on the message board, post him a question. And now he's on Twitter and stuff all the time. But back, like you say, in the 90s, that was kind of a big deal that you could connect with this guy. And I think for a lot of the hardcore fans, the fantasy, and it's not so much a fantasy, you could really work with Kevin, because Ming Chen, his webmaster, was just a fan of Clerks, and somebody told Kevin, hey, there's a Clerks fan site that this guy Ming made, and then he would like employ the guy. So yeah, it was just always fun, gave us an excuse to travel, and always like to see Kevin talk and everything. And I'm talking a lot, so I don't know,
In case
Robert.
you haven't noticed, we're going to talk about Kevin Smith today. And
Yeah,
Michael, you have
let's
a
talk about it.
great knowledge because,
Yeah.
and it was Robert's idea. It was your idea to bring Kevin and go to
Mhm.
bring, sorry, Michael, not
Yeah.
Kevin.
Well, I think
It would
just
be
Robert,
cool to bring
you know,
Kevin.
I was always
Yes.
excited about, like I heard you guys doing other shows talking about, like, sort of independent in-house content creation, right? And I
Because you
think
have
just
worked with him, you have met him, right?
yeah, I mean, I met him a few times. Like, that's a cool thing. It's like, you think of
Tell
guys
us.
like Tarantino or George Lucas or any, we're a big fan of these filmmakers. Like, they're not as accessible, right? But Kevin sort of tours around and kind of became famous like early on. You'd see the movie, but then whether it's at a college or wherever, they did sort of the early screenings of his movies. But he would get up and talk for a really long time about the movie, and you could ask him a question, and yeah, it was really accessible. Um, One of the things we did a few years ago, as Kevin did, he did and he did this several times. His mascot was Vulgar the Clown. If you've seen Clerks, like, it's the beginning. I think they had Kevin's friend Walt Flanagan was like a cartoonist, and did the cartoon of it's like a clown with like a garter belt and stockings. It sort of comes out and presents the logo at the beginning of Kevin's first film, Clerks, which is the famous thing with that. I think they filmed it for like shot it for like 27 grand or something. Filmed it in the convenience store he worked in at the time. He was in his 20s and stuff, and shot it on black and white to save money and stuff. And that's what sort of like Miramax bought it right at the Sundance Film Festival. It was discovered. And I think even he didn't think it was going to be such a big thing, meant to be more of like an art film, um, based on his experiences working at the convenience store. But yeah, he would always have like events and stuff. This fan community from his website, they would announce events. So at a certain point, I think in the 90s and then early 2000s, I mean, he had done at least 5 films then. And there were a couple of other films that he produced, for friends and stuff. So, they would have like their own film festival and stuff, kind of like our Experimentally Ill film festival
Cool.
we would do. So yeah, you could go, and yeah, a few years ago, it would either be like myself and Lawrence, or I took my mom a few times. It's like a family affair, and we would, go. And there were there's like a lot of opportunities to to meet Kevin and stuff. The first time I met Kevin was I think in 2006 when our friend Lawrence, he was working at CN8, the Comcast network at the time, and Barry Nolan, who was like sort of a noted like entertainment journalist and stuff. He had his own show called Night Beat, and yeah, they let me come. And Kevin was promoting Clerks 2 and stuff, and they let me just come there to meet him and talk to him a little bit. And yeah, just and now Kevin with podcasting is always doing like different live shows. We saw him a couple of times, over the years. They'll do his Jay and Silent Bob Get Old with him and Jason Mewes, of course, his friend who they became sort of stoner icons as Jay and Silent Bob, and then kind of had like a falling out a little bit because Jason like struggled with substance abuse and stuff, and even that was transparent with Kevin. Always telling stories and stuff. You could go on his he used to have the blog Silent Bob Speaks, and there's a series of entries called Me and My Shadow where he talks about Jason's struggles and stuff. But so they started doing this podcast. It was like sort of a sobriety like podcast, like keep Jason accountable, give him something to do, and he'll tell you and the fans will tell you stories and stuff, and the fans will kind of keep him accountable and keep him drug free and stuff.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's a cool story. I mean, cool. I mean, that's a nice story, interesting story background.
Yeah, but anyway, just like you say about meeting them, yeah, like they're pretty accessible, and they've done a bunch of. They're touring around now because Clerks 3 just came out, so they're doing a lot of different conventions and stuff, and yeah, just always seem like pretty accessible. Obviously there's like a big cult following with the films, but you can always reach those guys, and for us, I think for a lot of people too who are independent film filmmakers and stuff, like not everybody's independent film took off like a Clerks, but he inspired like a lot of people. So yeah.
So should we take it a step back a bit and just start and talk about you? I mean, don't worry, we're not going to put the like lamp and interview you, like to give you the third degree.
My lamp just blew out, I think.
Like, what do you do? What is your occupation? I mean, are you a filmmaker? Are you an independent artist? You have podcasts?
Sure. Yeah. I do like a lot of like freelance things right now, like video editing and stuff like that. And I've also the past year I've been studying screenwriting at Grub Street, the Center for Creative Writing in Boston. So and I'm doing kind of a thing that's, I mean, there's been so many things that I think Clerks has inspired, kind of inspired with dialogue heavy, I guess. And yeah, so it's been fun, right? Robert's been like our savior because he was sort of the guy. He was like one of our big fans, I think, who would participate, was in the film festival and stuff and events. I used to do all the press releases and stuff and a lot of like writing like that. But Robert always saved us with, publicity from the shows, like taking pictures and video and stuff.
I mean,
right, Robert?
It's just, yeah, it's fun because I mean, it works both ways. Just that you give a platform to like artists, creators that participate, like in the independent. Yeah. Let me get this right. Experiment the ill.
I'm like, I gotta defer to like Robert, so like I can take a break here and like collect my thoughts, and then I'm like, oh, I forgot it's Robert. Like
Robert, the scene is yours. Take it away.
I forgot. I'm like, Robert will drive. That's yeah.
I mean,
Robert and I are always going at it.
The effects.
The podcast. So here's the thing I can do, like stop me if I'm just going on too long, but
that's why we brought you here. Just keep talking.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, right. I'm not used to being the guest. I'm usually interviewing people, but what did we do? I mean, in the early 2000s, around the same time as becoming a Kevin fan, my uncle was doing this sort of health and fitness show. He's like a fitness instructor, and he sort of introduced me to like, hey, you can go to like a I don't know how it is in like Sweden or anywhere else, but in Massachusetts, here, in the States, we're kind of like spoiled. There are a lot of these now they say like community media centers because they include, they teach you all kinds of things. But um, in the early 2000s, it was anyone can come to this channel and learn how to make videos, and we'll put it on this channel, but it's on cable, but it's only broadcast within that town. It doesn't go anywhere else. If you
Wait, I
want your
have a question. Sorry, I have to interrupt you.
Mhm.
How does that work? Is like the local community, the municipality was
Yeah,
funding that? I
it's
mean,
well, this is another thing. I mean, the whole cable access thing. I studied communications and wrote about. There were these two guys, George Stoney and Red Burns, introduced like when cable first came out in the early 70s, 80s, whatever. It's like, yeah, there should be a channel like for the people. This is like pre-internet and stuff. So
mhm,
yeah, it's like sort of publicly funded. I think they pull it out of your cable bill or whatever. And then, I mean, in the States here, I think the famous cable access spoof was like Wayne's World and like, stuff like that. The idea that like
wait.
we're making mistakes here. We don't really know quite what we're doing, but our lights blow out or whatever happens in the middle of our
It
show. This
happens in streaming as well, right?
every man tries to make a show. But yeah, so I got into doing like cable access TV stuff and interning, and eventually working in this stuff. And then yeah, I was introduced to our friend Lawrence Holly. He was also a friend of my uncle, and he was working at the Wellesley Channel at the time, doing the news and stuff. So I used to kind of split my time doing that. And we became friends because of like talking about pop culture and talking about movies and stuff like that. And then yeah, we started to do like Lawrence did a weird video show, an access show called Random Acts, which is sort of like experimental video and stuff. And I was sort of just like playing around with video with my friends. We did this weird show called Insubordinate, which was just home movie stuff, really. And then just doing stuff with Lawrence. We always want to say like, you'd put stuff on the Access channel, right? And they used to talk about, there used to be a kind of the techie guy at the channel in Newton where I was at the time, who would talk about like TV is a push medium, right? You like push it out, and then there's the channel, and there's a captive audience like somewhere, but like the internet is like a pull medium where you have to like know to like go to it, to check it out. So they were still, hyping up what cable access or public access TV was. And so we thought it was cool, but we're putting like weird artsy stuff on. We wanted to like see more of a reaction. So we did different art gallery shows. Like we went to this showed stuff at Out of the Blue Art Gallery in Cambridge, Mass, and this other place, the Zeitgeist Gallery. And that was like the precursor to the Experimental Eel Film Festival. It was we called it, we combined our two shows, right? So we called it Random Acts of Insubordination. And that was just us, our different sort of weird videos and stuff. Um, and then, yeah, we wanted to do like a bigger thing. And there's the Coolidge Corner Theater in Brookline, and then the Somerville Theater in Somerville, Mass, that are sort of like famous historic theaters, but you can basically like rent out the basement, being like a few $100. So we did
You
that,
can
and we
just
said,
go
like,
film, go and record or film a film, like
I mean, I guess you could do that. They don't care what you do, but you can basically like if you're an indie filmmaker, you can
Mhm.
um you can go and just show whatever you want, show your stuff. But we started meeting like different, like our friend D.L. Polanski, who's the famous weird local artist in Alston, Mass, and different filmmaker friends, eccentric artists, filmmaker friends that we would meet. And so, well, let's include those guys and try to get the spotlight off of just us. And then that became the Experimentally Ill Film Festival. And I would do a lot of writing the press releases for that, and we get like write ups in the paper, like in the Boston Globe and stuff like that. And that was really fun. And then I always wanted to do like a radio thing too. We did all this stuff in sort of like indie TV or indie film, and I always wanted to do radio. And so we found this kind of this upstart in Boston called Unregular Radio, which is sort of like a hole in the wall studio, and that was a streaming internet thing, but it was an actual studio you could go to. So yeah, we did the experimentally ill radio show. It was like a weekly show where we had different weird. By then we met our friend John Hartman from Real Groovy Films, and he had us act in some of his movies. We always wanted to act too, so we were in sort of these weird like grindhouse kind of experimental movies. His feature, The Shackling, that was a big feature that took 5 years, to make, that you can see out there on YouTube. And then El Terrifico is the other one that I did all the audio for and stuff. And yeah, then we got a chance to like, hey, let's like interview those guys, like hang out with those guys, and we did that. And eventually that station on regular radio kind of they want to restructure the whole staff, and they went kind of corporate a little bit, and they moved into the office of like around Boston. They had these papers called alternative weekly papers. Like it was the Boston Phoenix, which was kind of famous. My friend Lawrence will love. We got to say, I guess Steven Spielberg or something was dating somebody at some time that worked at the Phoenix. So there's a Spielberg quote, and somebody says, "What do you think of the Boston Phoenix?" And he said, "That's a
The
good
things
paper."
we learned today. Okay, please go on.
That's a good paper. So there used to be the alternative weekly paper, and that was like the cool, like hipster, like paper that you wanted to like check out that had more like underground stuff in it. So sometimes we got articles about our film festival in there too. But eventually the Unregular Radio, the guy who started Unregular Radio, kind of like paired up with somebody from this. There was the Boston Phoenix, and then there was the Weekly Dig, which was sort of the other one that like I don't know if they're necessarily competition, but those were like the two big ones. So the Unregular Radio guy, this other guy, John Loftus, went to partnered up with people at the Weekly Dig. So then they said like and they got rid of all the other like regular like daily DJs and stuff, and they said like we need people to like fill content, basically people to be our slaves, because we really didn't get paid anything for that, but they liked our show, and so then we for a while in the morning we had like a morning show. It was like Experimentally Ill AM, like the AM edition of Experimentally Ill. That was, we still had our weird artist friends on, but it was a little more like a traditional like a morning show. Like I would like read the news and stuff, and we get to like play music, like alternative punk music or different new wave music, or like, and it was like a free form radio station. So we did that for a while, did that for a couple of months maybe. We survived, and then we sort of petered out there, and eventually this channel like went away like anyway. But then I put like so much effort into that, it felt like I wanted to keep it going. So I was always interested in podcasting and did like little experiments with it. But that's when I got like more of my own equipment and stuff. And then it was like the experimental show up to that was like myself, my friend like Lawrence Holly. A lot of times we had DL Polanski on. He was like our third chair for the morning show. And I had a couple of other friends of mine, the sort of alt girl like model friend of ours who called herself Miss Mary Mack. She was on there,
So we
her
have
now.
models so far. We have Spielberg. We have substances issues. We have everything. We have the whole show business here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Yes.
basically,
Cover
yeah.
the whole
So
gamut.
we did the experimental podcast. It became a podcast on my own, and
Do
it's
you
basically
still have it? Is that
yeah.
what you're?
So experimental.com is where it is, and then you can also get like the newer episodes. Like I know you guys also use like Anchor.fm to do stuff too, and yeah, you can find it on like Spotify or like Apple Podcasts and all that stuff. And that's what it is now. It's basically like a one-on-one, and it could be anything, I suppose, but it's been like a one-on-one interview thing, like kind
With
of like a more
indie
kind of like
artists.
a more kind of like a more experimental artist version of, like Mark Maron's got his WTF podcast or whatever. We try to do like introspective interviews, but also funny stuff. And yeah, I've done like things with filmmaking and helping other filmmakers and some work in it. I'm like I said, I'm working on a script. I'll hopefully do more of my own stuff. But yeah, I wasn't really like a documentarian as a filmmaker, but I was a podcaster, right? So I prided myself if we would go to different events and I meet like weird artist people like in the scene. I'm like, this guy has like a really good story. So then I would have like a forum, like, oh, I could have you like on the show, right? And people don't really get it. You got to kind of like play the long game, like you guys know as like content creators. Even if you don't always, like I have this friend who's like a critic. He's like, there you go again, talking like there's thousands of people like listening, which we know like there aren't always, right? If it's like a niche thing. But Kevin Smith's thing, like with movie making, he says like only make the movie that only you can make, right? Because people always ask him like, why don't you make a superhero movie? Because he always would become famous for going on long monologues himself about like pop culture stuff and superheroes and stuff like that. And he's always thinking like, anyone can make, those movies, but I make Kevin Smith movies. So I always felt like a duty to if somebody had an interesting story, like I have like a forum, and sooner or later, I mean, Kevin Smith had a heart attack right a few years ago, so kind of confronts his own mortality, and that's a big theme in Clerks 3 too, whether you've seen it or not. Like without spoilers, I mean, it's in the trailer. Like they have Clerks follows friends work at a convenience store, Dante and Rand, right? And at the beginning of the movie, Randall has the heart attack. It says like, oh, like what am I doing with my life? I'm spending my life, talking about other people's movies and complaining about customers and stuff like that. It's like I want to make a movie, and so then he basically essentially makes Clerks in the convenience store, right? So it's like meta, like you're kind of right. Well, he's in their movie Clerks 3. It's called Inconvenience, right? Which was actually the original title that Kevin in real life had come up with for Clerks. So for me with my podcast, which is an audio podcast, it was like, you're making a document, you're preserving somebody's story, and like it's something that you can pass on. Like we just had our friend who Robert knows about, our friend Mick Cusimano, who recently passed away from brain cancer and stuff. I mean, he was like an old guy, 71, but he got like a week to live, and he lasted like 4 years and continued to make films himself and do like poetry. He was like an outlaw poet, like kind of like influenced by like the beatniks, like the Beat Generation, and into like Kerouac and stuff. I mean, he met like Hunter S. Thompson outside of a Beat Generation like conference, and was doing like a performing with these poets, and like Tracy Chapman was like checking them out. And he talked about like the biggest lie, at least in America, maybe over in Sweden as well, I don't know. The biggest lie is like you can't do something if you've never done it before. Like you can't do that. You don't have experience. Like what are you doing a live stream? You never did that before, or you never did a podcast.
That's how you learn.
Yeah. So then like Mick was just always inspiring us because he just kept trying stuff. Like he didn't make his first movie till he was 50 years old. Like prior to this, he did a ton of stuff with poetry, and his day job was like working in the mailroom at Harvard University and stuff, and called himself the professor of surrealism, right? He became like obsessed with surreal art and challenging meaning and tapping into your subconscious. And I mean, the long and short of it is like, I have like this 2-hour interview with him, which is his like, this like life story that, you can pass on. And there's other things that he did, but I have that one. It means something to me. So I think that's a big thing with Kevin too, is like making these movies to kind of, pass it on. And what he liked about making movies is putting up stuff on the screen that he related to. And I mean, the thing back in the 90s, like you say, I mean, now we're spoiled, right? Like we have the Marvel
internet
stuff, right? But like back in the 90s, like Marvel didn't really have two nickels to rub together to make a superhero movie. Like things weren't as popular. And so like
there
when
is a story about Marvel and Kevin. Sorry, I just remember is there something about Kevin Smith and Marvel?
You mean like with how Stan Lee, they referenced Stan Lee, or how Stan Lee was in some of Kevin Smith's movies?
I think something. Yes, I'm not really sure what, but
I was going to throw it to you, Robert, so I can check if I can get my light back on. But yeah, we can talk about. I mean, yeah, Kevin. I mean, one of the bigger scenes in Clerks is like when they talk about Star Wars, right? The two clerks are like,
Right.
but then the Death Star and stuff, right? And then in Mallrats, right? Yeah, they're sort of making comic book references, right? And
Right.
um, Brody and TS, like the two friends in that, similar to Clerks in that way. They're having like girlfriend trouble and stuff. But Brody's like a big comic book fan, and they have the discussion like Superman could never have, or Lois could never have Superman's baby, because if she got a tan, the kid would kick right through her stomach, and stuff like that. And so I think Kevin thinks like, yeah, the Hollywood like higher ups, saw that story like, oh, this guy really knows about, the nuances of like superheroes and comics. So they kind of he kind of became associated with that stuff, and wrote the Superman Lives script, which was never used. But yeah, like in Mallrats, that was like Stan Lee's first cameo in a movie, and then I think, there's probably other examples, but the obvious thing for fans is Kevin, like the Jersey trilogy, right? And the early Viewers universe movies, it was like his own universe. Clerks, Mallrats,
Right.
Chasing Amy, Dogma, up till Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. They're all kind of connected in some way, and other characters reference other characters, and you always have Jay and Silent Bob in there, kind of as your Greek chorus in certain examples. They're there, and so yeah, he had like his own sort of like cinematic universe, like sort of before.
Right.
Like
he was ahead of his time. He was not ahead.
Exactly.
He was a pioneer. Yes,
and it was because
he
was such like a comic book geek, I guess. Anyone who's read comics, right? That Marvel or DC or that's or even that's like such a thing, is to have a shared universe, but in movies it was just wasn't as common at the time. So
Well,
we
what
have
was neat
written
about
some.
it is.
Sorry, go on, Robert.
No, go ahead.
Go on.
No, go ahead.
No. I didn't have anything to say. You have something to say. I just wanted to go to the questions.
Yeah, throw to Robert while I check on this light though.
Well, no, it's just that I think the neat thing about with Kevin Smith's earlier work, and it gradually progressed in later films, is the whole fourth wall breaking. Like letting in the audiences in on the jokes, so to speak. So whether I know, like Mike had mentioned about how like Kevin Smith had their own MCU, was like the View Askew universe, and I think it was the Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, where, spoiler, at the end of the film, a lot of the characters from earlier films had appeared, like made a cameo. And if you really were in tune with some of Kevin Smith's film, you would get in on the joke with anything they may have referred to, like a past movie or a character, and to kind of see that theme, like you see like in the MCU, like especially with She-Hulk, a lot of fourth wall breaking, whether making inside joke that's directly for the fans or saying something that's in context of them. Yeah.
You were talking, yeah. By the time you get to Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, where Jay and Silent Bob, like the fans, like, wouldn't it be cool if they got their own movie? And even Kevin was like, oh, like the stoner jokes. He has a whole movie, like he has all this other clever dialogue, right? You seem like a little bit ashamed of like the lower brow stuff in his movies, right? He always talked about, he writes about the profound and the profane, right? But by the time you get to Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, yeah, it's like a live action cartoon, right, where they do like a fourth wall break sometimes.
Right.
A Jay and Silent Bob movie, who would pay to see that? And then they look to you, the audience. And like before that, yeah, like Dogma was his sort of, it's still a comedy, but it was really sort of serious, sort of meditation on his upbringing as a Catholic, kid, young person, and kind of having a crisis of faith, questioning the faith, questioning dogma and stuff. But Jay and Silent Bob were still in there. And they got like death threats from like the Catholic League and stuff like that. And it was sort of serious stuff in real life. And there's a famous thing where Kevin protested Dogma, his own movie. Like they didn't recognize him. They interviewed him on the news, and he was holding a sign that said "Dogma is dog shit." So, So I think like when they wanted to do Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back is like, let's do like kind of like a lighter movie, and like a goofier movie. And that's like kind of funny because like you think about like by then I think it was only like 4 or 5, movies, but they had made little references to each other. But yeah, by the time you get
Right.
to Strike Back, these different characters are crossing over. I mean, Jason Lee, who is a really good, he played Brody, who is sort of the one of the two protagonists in Mallrats, and then like the next movie, Chasing Amy, he played Banky, who was Ben Affleck plays Holden McNeil. They're comic book artists, and so when Strike Back, Jason Lee, like both of the characters, Brody and Banky, show up in Strike Back, and Jason Lee plays both of them. So like if you see a movie like that and you've never seen the earlier movies, you're kind of be like kind of confused, I guess. Like what's what's this all
Right.
about? Or it'll make you curious to go back and check it out. That was kind of the fun thing too, right? Becoming a fan and like seeing that, like, oh, there's like other movies you can sort of go back and check it out. People like, hey, like, yeah, like, have you seen Clerks, and have you seen this and so like it was sort of fun discovering the Views universe movies. And then like I said earlier, Kevin, I think around the time of like Mallrats or so, they got some deal where they had extra money to produce like some other movies, so they weren't as big budget as like a Mallrats at the time, but they did. He had like a friend who did this movie Drawing Flies, which Jason Lee was also in, and they play. It's him and like a group of friends. Jason Mewes is also like in that, and they they sort of go out to this campground or something. They're like searching for Bigfoot. It was like all kind of, it was more like low budget experimental stuff, kind of like back to like what Clerks was.
Right.
And then Vulgar was another one, which they gave money to Kevin's friend Brian Johnson, and he took the idea of that Vulgar the clown, the View Askew mascot, and like made him into a real character. So Brian O'Halloran, who played Dante, like the lead in Clerks, he got to play. I forget what his name is, but he gets to be Vulgar the clown. Is like a birthday clown who he tries to forget he tries to make money on the side by I forget what it is. It's like he thinks he's doing like a bachelorette party or something like that, and then
Uh-huh.
he ends up getting like sexually assaulted by these like crazy guys, and it's sort of like a dark comedy, and then it becomes like a sort of like a revenge tale, right? He goes back and tries to like get them back. And there was also another movie, A Better Place, which I only saw once. I saw that at the last Vulgarthon. Vulgarthon was the
Mhm.
name of his because of the mascot. Like that was the name of the film festival events he had. And I finally
Right.
got to see A Better Place a couple of years ago when I went there and to New Jersey. But that was made by Kevin's friend Vincent Pereira, who they call the View Askew historian, who was Kevin's friend, who was also a clerk with him working at Quick Stop, around 1992, 3, 4, when they made Clerks, and he kind of inspired Kevin to be a filmmaker, I think, too, because they used to go from New Jersey, they go to New York to see like the artsier movies and stuff.
Right.
And
Before you continue, I'm going to interrupt you once more. Sorry. I have a question. It's a very important question.
Mhm,
Besides the clerks, okay,
mhm.
what would you say it's a favorite film by Kevin Smith for you that has really
Uh,
impacted you in a way?
I think well, I mean there's a couple for like different reasons. I mean, I think Chasing Amy is a really good movie. When I saw that at the Vulgarthon, it made me because it's
And
a
I
really
have
good.
to agree with you. And I'm so sad because I remember I really enjoyed at the time when I was
Mhm.
chasing Amy. I loved it. And now I don't remember a thing. I
Gotta
have to
watch it
rewatch
again.
it. It's like I cannot
Yeah.
even. I mean, I remember the
Well,
actors and everything, but I don't remember.
yeah.
Like I'm old.
Oh
Mhm.
no.
Yeah.
Leave you
Well, yeah.
not the
I mean, that was like ahead of its time too. We were talking
It
about.
was a great movie. I remember that. Yes,
Mhm.
but don't ask me what happened.
Well, yeah. I
Anyway,
mean,
yeah, I mean,
I
yeah.
mean, I
There's this
think that
girl,
was
Amy. Yes, it's Ben
kind of
Affleck.
ahead.
Yeah.
It was Ben Affleck. Do you want me to just tell you what happens in the movie?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, of course. Yeah, it's like yeah.
uh, well, Chasing
I'll just
Amy
cover my
Kids
ears.
is about it's I mean Ben Affleck is Holden McNeil, right, with his buddy Banky, the comic book artist, and you can kind of tell, right, that Affleck's character is sort of like based on Kevin there. You know, they talk a lot about how and they have their characters, right? They're sort of stoner superhero characters based off Jay and Silent Bob, BluntMan and Chronic, and that's being like like celebrated. But then they kind of reference they had like an earlier comic book. I think it was in that universe 37, which is a reference, which is a Clerks reference. But yeah, and like how they want to do something more personal. And stuff. But then, yeah, Holden Affleck's character, you know, he meets Alyssa, who is, you know, he's like crushing on Alyssa and stuff. And she's from his hometown and stuff in New Jersey. And then he finds out that she's a lesbian. So, but they kind of, it's like a will they, won't they, and they, you know, kind of fall in love for a while, and then sort of fall out of love. So, yeah,
Typical
there's
90s film.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
What's-
but I also like too, like the thing to bring it. I mean, like Robert was talking about the current stuff Kevin is doing. I mean, I think in the early
Mhm.
2000s, you know, they were always pulling Kevin in for like different talk shows and things and different like I think Howard Stern would, you know, call up Kevin early in the morning and be like, "Hey, what would Superman do, you know, here?" And he's like, "I don't know, you know, use kryptonite or what." You know, he didn't even really, that was sort of like the gag. He's like the comic book guy, right? And that's today, like that's sort of the running gag is like you always see like an article, you know, comicbook.com, you know, Kevin Smith says this, you know, they just pull some quote from one of his like podcasts or something. But anyway, like I think around the time maybe like 2007, 8, 9 something. I mean, he got they were always trying to get Kevin to like expand his audience. Like he had this cult following audience because they followed all the interconnected characters in the movies and they like listening to him tell stories himself. And so he got kind of like frustrated with the whole like Hollywood thing of like doing focus groups and trying to expand the audience and spending all this money marketing to people that don't bother seeing his stuff anyway. So he started to I mean, he would tour around doing Q&As and stuff. We used to see him in Boston, and you could ask him a question. And but then he started like taking the movies out. Like he made by the time he makes the movie Red State, which is like a total departure from his comedies. I mean, it has little jokes here and there, but it's a pretty like
Right.
dark movie, kind of inspired by like Fred Phelps and the Westboro Baptist Church. They were sort of like the God hates fags people, and they would like protest like military funerals and all kinds of like crazy stuff. I think Kevin, he had his friend Malcolm Ingram, who we used to write for Film Threat magazine. He met on the set of Mallrats. Like he used to do documentaries and stuff, and I think Malcolm like showed him some interview footage he got of Fred Phelps, like the actual guy. And Kevin was like creeped out by that. So he's working on a script, Red State, and he described it as like whenever he got to a point in the script where he thought he knew where the story's going, he figures like the audience will predict it. So he goes the opposite way. And they cast Michael Parks in that, who's famous for some like Tarantino stuff, but he was kind of like blacklisted in like Hollywood, and they put him in Red State, and it was like amazing performance and stuff. But basically Kevin starts like touring around his movies. Like so it wouldn't get a traditional release. You'd have to like go to a, you know, theater, comes to your town, at least in the States and stuff. Sometimes he would like go to the UK and stuff. So seeing Red State, they call it the Red State USA tour. That was kind of exciting because that was the beginning of him like touring the stuff around. And then in like subsequent years, he did that with the Jay and Silent Bob reboot movie he made a couple years ago, and he's also doing that right now on the Convenience tour with Clerks 3. So there's
That's
a couple
cool.
ways.
That's very cool. It's kind of
Yeah,
jealous of not living in the US right now or
yeah, but
there.
it's also
So,
on
you know.
streaming now though. It just came out. I think you can see it on Prime now, but like he's not coming to Boston with it until like.
Mhm.
And you can also on those they have Fathom events here that are like limited screenings of stuff that'll come to like bigger cinemas like sometimes.
I would
Yeah,
cosplay in a 90s outfit, you know, just, you know, with the grunge, like kind of
yeah.
shirt and t-shirt and like
I get
something
that's a joke
my
in towards
waist,
theory, like
bright,
that's
yes, jeans and yeah,
I mean, I
typical
guess
man.
people do associate him with the '90s because that's when he kind of like
I
came
mean,
about.
I do. I'm
Yeah.
Generation X. I know he
Mhm.
hasn't done only 90s, but the whole
Mhm.
Jay and Silent Bob, that's kind of iconic. And yeah,
Yeah,
the whole Chasing
it's
Amy, and
like a.
yes. I haven't seen all of the films, so
They're
but
definitely
yeah.
that's what they say. Like, well, this is still relatable with like clerks
Mm,
because everybody's had like a crappy job and stuff. It's just like they're in Ash and wash jeans and there's no
mm,
cell
yeah.
phones, stuff like that.
Mm,
So, Robert, back to you,
yeah.
Robert.
Yes, sir. No, no, no worries. No, I mean, I made the thing I always liked about Kevin Smith is that you always were in on the joke, whether it's if
Mhm.
he gives like an inside kind of like a view of like something happened in the film that he made, or like even if it's like within the film, there'll be like a callback, whether it's self-deprecating remark about actual Kevin Smith or just something either past work or past movie, and so just to see
Mhm.
that evolve from different forms, like in the films or when he's on touring, or just or in his smodcast or his
Yes, right. Smart. They had View Askew with him and his producer Scott Mosier, and then when they started doing the podcast, they called it Smodcast. So Smith Mosier podcast, and then like Smodcast now is like what is it like Smodcast Pictures or now or Smodco is the company, and now they he just bought Kevin just bought like a theater in the uh the Atlantic Highlands like cinema or something in Jersey. So now they had a black box theater like where they do like little shows, which reminds us of
Oh,
like some,
okay.
which reminds me of some of the shows that we did, but called the Smod Castle, which is next to the Quick Stop, so that's like kind of cool where he right where he worked and stuff. But now they're gonna have Smod Castle Cinemas, like he has his own like movie theater that he actually has a apartment above it that they're gonna rent you as like an Airbnb. So I don't know like if other people can stay there or what. So they did a couple of different events there. I mean, Kevin did sort of a string of like comedies, and then like yeah, like beginning with Red State, he starts going through this weird like experimental period. Right, like there's Red State and there's Tusk about a
Yeah.
podcast or two, like with Michael Parks. Says you can stay in my house, but you have to live as a walrus for so many hours or whatever. Wear this suit.
Right.
I guess it was based on they saw it on like the UK's version of Craigslist, and they thought it was a real ad, but I think it turned out to be a fake. That was Tusk, and so they just showed Tusk at the his own cinema in Jersey. Um, yeah. So it's just there just seems to always be like reinventing himself, and even though he has sort of this for following, it seems to still be like sort of an all in the family kind of thing. Like I
Yeah.
think Jason Mewes' wife now, Jordan, like helps run their company that Smodco. It's sort of like a View Askew Productions like part two, of him doing his own thing. There's also this couple now who travels around like when he does the tours. Josh and Liv are like this couple who they make their own independent stuff, but like Josh does a lot of his like videography, like stuff like Robert's doing or Shalala Productions, and so they're putting up video clips and interview clips with fans. Like if you join the That Kevin Smith Club, which I joined, for like a few bucks a month, it's like his Patreon, and they throw up like exclusive like clips and stuff. But if you go to the convenience store, you go to see Clerks 3, he's doing like meeting with fans and those club members and stuff, and they interview you and stuff. And he does sort of AMAs on there where you can pop on and like talk to him. Again, like pretty inclusive fan community because is a fan. That's always the thing. It's like he's one of us who made it into a bigger
That is
thing.
so cool. That is very cool. The way you
I
talk
mean,
about Kevin Smith, and I mean, it's
Mm,
like he's a very, as you say, approachable person. and he keeps doing what he's doing, that he has
Yeah.
stayed true to his art and keeps trying to evolve and find new ways of expressing himself.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys follow like NFTs. I don't know anything about like
Yeah,
NFTs.
well, yeah,
He's doing
now it's there's no NFTs anymore, or I mean, I guess kind
there
of.
isn't at least
And I
well
don't know if you're still listening, but I hope I'm not
another
saying
cool
anything
is
wrong.
another cool thing. Like I haven't seen much. I think it's like a horror anthology that I don't know if he wrote all of it, but it's like an anthology that they did called Kilroy Was Here a few years ago. I think around the same time as they did the Jay and Silent Bob reboot. But yeah, and I guess then he did that with like college students, like Ringling College in like Florida. So that was like kind of cool, you know, still kind of staying in touch with like the indie roots kind of thing. And I guess they were gonna like sell the movie as an NFT or something, and like that was kind of controversial. So yeah, it just always seems to be, and I know like Robert, you know, I know you had mentioned like him kind of reinventing himself too, like not just sort of doing. I mean, he has his podcasts and stuff, and they do a YouTube thing, Fat Man Beyond, right, where he talks a long
Right.
time also about pop culture stuff. But then he also always said he would never direct something that wasn't his own thing. I mean, and he tried to do that with Cop Out with Bruce Willis, which wasn't a great experience. But then he did do a little superhero stuff too. Like I know you know, like he directed a couple of episodes of Supergirl, the Supergirl
Right.
show.
Oh,
And the
he did.
Flash.
And
Oh,
he
okay.
had Jason Mewes in it, like never forgets his friends, right? They don't play Jay and Silent Bob. Like there's sort of a Jay and I don't know if there's that episode, another episode where it was him and Mewes, where there's sort of like a Jay and Silent Bob esque, you know, bunch of characters. And it
It's like
was
a
just
quick cameo. Yeah.
Mm.
yeah, it was like Jason Mewes coming out of somewhere to a parking lot with some like girl he's trying to impress, and he was like, hey, that's my car or something, and some supervillain like destroys it, and then he's like, that's my mom's car or something like that. So and there's all kinds of references or more like hardcore people who are more hardcore fans than me even I think you know
More
there's plenty.
hardcore than you. You have been talking about everything, all his secrets. Well, kind of.
Well, I
I
didn't
mean,
even talk about guys when Zach and Miri make a porno, right? With starred Seth
yes.
Rogen,
Well,
Elizabeth
yeah.
Banks
Also
in
a cool movie.
2008. I went to myself and my friend Lawrence, who you know, we did our own productions, right? We flew to Pittsburgh, PA, and then we took a long cab ride to Monroeville, PA. We were extras in Zach and Miri. There was just like a big mall scene, and that's like a double geek cred thing because I'm not a huge like zombie fan, but like Lawrence is, and it was filmed in the Monroeville Mall, which is I think where they shot Dawn of the Dead originally, and I didn't think it was going to reference any of that like in the movie, but if you see the movie, Seth Rogen's like playing hockey and he's wearing a jersey that they're like the Monroeville Zombies is like the name of the team, so they kind of reference it. And Robert's always like a hardcore fan of like me and Lawrence, or he'll find I don't really think he can see. I think he can like see like our noses or something. We're like truly in the back in that one. We did some background work in Boston here, but and Robert will like find the still of it and like send it to us in the dead of night or something. And oh, like
Well,
they're
I mean, it's just a funny thing. It's like, yeah, I mean, Lawrence and I, yeah, we're here. And then they would have to kind of give me like a reference, like what scene it was, so I could try and narrow it down where to find them. And sure enough, I saw like Lawrence's head. I'm like, I think that's Lawrence. And I was sending them like, yeah, that's him. So,
But you
but I
have
mean,
to squint. Yeah. So with
it's
that, that
always
was that
exciting.
was fun. We got to see, Kevin kind of directing like a little bit and stuff, and yeah, I think Clerks 3 was like a much smaller shoot, so there weren't like too many extras. There was like Jay and Bob Reboot had like a convention scene that a lot of people went, and you kind of dressed as Jay and Silent Bob. I didn't go to that one, but I thought I can't do that. What dress in a silly costume on film, and like meanwhile, like the movies that I've been in, like with our friend John Hartman, like the Shackling movie or whatever, I end up as like half a dozen different characters. I have like an eyeball strapped to my head or some other like weird thing is like going on. So Uh,
Mm.
yeah.
I think
um,
you have covered all of. Did I say that again? All of the questions that we have written, you have covered
mhm.
everything. I mean,
So,
yeah,
and as a warning, Mike,
yeah.
before we
Is
went
there
on
going to
air,
be
folks.
some banging? Are the contract? Have the
Yeah, so that's
contractors?
I'm trying to
that's
see if
why.
there's anything that I need to ask you that
I
we
wanted to
haven't.
just like talk more and like throw to Robert more because I thought he was gonna like throw to like a Ron Burgundy clip or there'd be like something
Oh
to
no, I
entertain
mean,
me.
I
Like,
think you're on a roll there, so why
yeah.
ruin a good thing?
Yeah.
But
Well,
before like we get drowned out here by the thundering
Yeah.
hammering that would really be a big downer. I did want to be able to put up some graphics of where people can find everyone here. So like with Mike,
mhm.
we've got
In true
his
90s style.
in true
like
90s
you said.
styles of his
Is it a
Twitter,
90s style
Instagram,
graphic?
I guess.
and
I mean, yeah.
Facebook
I mean,
stuff.
it is Windows point, not even
Is it
3.1, like
It's
0.2 or
That's funny.
in
I
the
don't know.
description. We'll also have the links there for folks
Yeah,
to check out Mike
Yes.
and as well as
Yes.
for me and
that's cool.
for Xanthi there. So, but no, I mean,
Yeah, we could
no,
just
I mean,
say experimentallyo.com
We should
or
have planned like a 3 hour show today because I mean, there's so many things that we haven't covered and that you could easily
well, what do you want
enlighten
to?
us.
I mean,
Yes.
guys,
It's just an hour. It's like nothing. I mean, sorry,
yeah.
sorry,
that's right.
but
Uh,
yes.
yeah, no, but like, thanks for having me on. It was really fun. Yeah, I'd like to
It's been fun hearing you
come
talking
back
all
again.
about those
I
things
know
about
Robert just
Kevin.
I mean, it's always cool to see what you guys are doing and what like Robert has always impressed
Thanks.
me because he's trying always seems to be in reinventing himself. Like doing stuff at the Axis channel, and then I started doing different sort of field productions and stuff. And now it just seems like you're really excited about like live streaming and stuff like that. So and I
And
was
when
always
it comes to our show, I can say that Robert is doing all the production. Really, I mean, you have
mhm,
been you set together everything like the so all the credits go to Robert.
I
mhm.
mean, it all credits also for folks like you and Mike that's interested to participate because otherwise it'd just be a lot of dead air and me going,
Yeah.
what do I do?
Well, I thought. Wait, I mean, what's the? What about that Ron Burgundy clip? Or well, we got shots fired. That was in there. That's all right. That's any new toy always has. When we did our radio show, we had like different. There'd be like a Max Headroom clip in there.
Put some effects if you have
So,
them handy already.
oh, this is
Like
roasting
and
me.
subscribe everyone and follow us and leave a comment. Oh, exactly. Do what do what said.
Do whatever the
Exactly.
thing that went up there. So
That's
Exactly that.
impressive.
Do that.
yeah, I had to fix
Yeah,
that one earlier. So,
that's awesome.
um,
Mm.
but no, it's always fun. Whenever you get together creative folks, like-minded folks like you guys, it's always fun to be able to
Yeah.
collaborate
What,
and
what was
just
the?
put some
What was
stuff
the?
out there.
I'll just talk it to you guys. Like, give me the hook here. What, Robert? What was your? Do you remember what the clip was that you had in our film festival? It was like some weird like ketchup
Oh.
blunder you had. Did you not want to talk about that? It was a very
No,
cool
I didn't. I didn't. No, I mean, I'm perfectly fine talking about it. I just kind of forgot about it, but no, it's like it was one of the experimental film festivals that Mike and Lawrence had, and I'd asked them like what type of submission was, and like if there's any specific length. It's just nothing like like a full movie or anything like, but just like a short film. So okay, it's a little bit more of like kind of like a kind of like a short skit kind of. Okay, so put it up there. Fun to see the screen. But the funny part about it was like I didn't know like when the next time I'll be able to do one of these things. So I kind of went a little bit all out with the end credits and just kind of let it drag out because I think it was a little bit too
It
short.
was
So I was
like the
afraid that you
slow
blink and you miss
Star
it.
Wars sprawl that Robert did, but Robert
What was it, like 10
also
seconds or what?
sponsored our like the
It might have
after
been a
party with
minute of
that.
end credits. So
Robert
Okay.
provided all the chicken wings for
Oh,
that.
that's something.
Shout out
That's
also
good.
to our friend Quincy Briscoe, who also co-hosted on stage with me for those shows. He's a legendary entertainer in the New England area. Also big cable access
Awesome.
guy, friend of ours.
Mhm.
And he also likes referencing other pop culture-y kind of movies and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, Robert can attest. Robert was like unofficial documentarian around those guys. So there were definitely a lot of interesting characters
Mm.
in the cable access scene, right?
Mm.
But with iPhone and other gizmos, it's the great equalizer, so that everyone can do pretty much what I was doing back then, which was just
Yeah,
document,
and that's
film,
what
or
I think.
post.
That's what Kevin says too. It's like back in the '90s, or the point of entry was like it was a lot harder to do it at all. You know, famously using his credit cards and selling his comic book collection and stuff like that.
Mm.
And I guess the most expensive, like they rented, the camera, and but even he says, yeah, anyone could make something now on their iPhone, right? So,
Mm.
and I think
Mm.
for him being in the '90s, like the internet and video and all this stuff, social media wasn't, a thing. So in order to get heard, it's like I got to make one of these movies because I think he saw Richard Linklater's Slacker, like in New York, one of those screenings he'd go with Vincent Pereira, his buddy. And so if this counts as a movie, I can make my movie. And yeah, I think even now he says if he was around, if he's starting out now, he would just do like a podcast, a blog. I
Mm.
mean, I feel like that's almost killed some of my momentum, right? Of just like movie making, because it's like, well, we could just hop on now and just like talk about a movie, and that's like instant gratification. But um, you just didn't have
Mm.
that now.
It was
But
way
there's a lot.
harder, more traditional back then. Like, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
word of mouth traditional. Yeah.
yeah. So
Indeed.
it's
Well,
awesome that you guys keep doing these shows, and yeah, I always
I
like
can say this,
independent
but
media, and
We are very
I see the trucks
independent.
coming
We can
in.
say that we
yeah,
are also very
Yeah,
independent here. So yeah, but
yeah. You guys met in like a class or something about like live streaming, right? Or something like
it
that.
was a workshop about right
yeah,
in the height of the pandemic is how
Mhm,
we virtually met. So,
mhm,
and just a matter that
before the yeah, was it?
mhm.
I
so
think it
it's
was in 19 before the summer. Yeah,
oh, I
Mhm.
thought was it summer 2020?
I think it
My
was
memory is
because I
pretty
did
bad.
it was August 19. I think so.
Okay.
But
Mhm.
I'm not certain. My
Well, we
memory.
need
I'm an
somebody
old
else. There's
person.
some like in the comments we'll have to go through like you guys got to have like a hardcore fan of your own who will like be your historian and keep track of those things. Is that-
Yeah. So that's a cool idea. A thought. I mean, yeah. Thank
That's a
you,
novel
Mike.
concept, but
Yeah. Yes.
and they can
Well,
see more.
yes. Sorry that I'm going to be now the party pooper, but here in this side of the
Yeah,
world, it's nighttime, and it is
sure. Well,
unfortunately
was
I
fun.
have to. Yes,
yeah, I was
I
gonna
will be
say I
the
just saw
rude
the
one. It's
trucks
my
pulling up,
fault.
so
Yeah.
but no,
Okay.
I no, I was gonna say Xanthi. I was seeing the trucks coming out, so that's why I was gonna say something. So
Oh,
you got to beat me to it. So, but again,
thank you
Mike,
so
thanks
much,
for
Michael.
Sure.
I know we just scratched the surface with everything
Yeah,
in that subject. So thank you
yeah.
so
I
much.
just
Thank you,
say
Robert, for bringing him, your friend.
Yeah, I just
pleasure.
say the final thing is just I mean Kevin was really or kind of he became the brand, right? When the first evening with Kevin Smith, that DVD came out, everyone saw his Q&As at the colleges and stuff and his writing, and he
Mm,
kind of became the thing. And because he made an independent film with Clerks, like no one knew the actors, so they wanted to talk to the writer director, and he was sort of like an early kind of like an influencer now, right? Like we have on social media. So and yeah,
correct.
now anyone can do a stream, make a movie, do a podcast, and he champions
True.
that too. So yeah, just keep doing what we're doing. Yeah,
True. Good
thanks.
point. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, let's give a big thank you to our chat as well for joining us,
Thanks,
our
guys.
friends. Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for participating and listening to our show. And what else, Robert? If there are people who
I'll just
want
say
to
like
see the replay, where can they find us?
they can find us on YouTube. Oh, let me throw that up again. Yeah, they could follow. They could
Oh,
catch
right.
the
Yes.
replay on our YouTube channel on Shalala Productions or on your
Mhm.
YouTube channel on Xanthi. Is that a tilde or S underscore S?
Well,
I can't see it. I know I
no,
copy that. I mean, it's the correct
yes.
one, but I just never know
Underscore.
what to
Yes.
call it.
Yeah,
But
that's
and
awesome. You have
also
some islands. Yeah, it's cool.
And
and on the website, we do have the Pop Goes the Stream page for people to check prior episodes as well. So,
and we're
next
looking
month,
forward to your comments. And if someone has a comment to Michael, of course, go ahead and leave something if you have any questions.
Yeah, I
And
saw that they're like,
yes,
this guy can really talk. He must have Irish blood.
yeah.
It's Irish in there.
Yeah. What were you saying, Robert, about about our next
no,
episode?
I think
Yeah.
a month from now, that's either the 17th or the 21st. Monday is when we'll be back on air,
November,
and there'll be
yeah.
and the only hint I'll give is it'll be a holiday theme, maybe for the next and maybe the wrap up of the year. So,
Oh,
and leave it at that.
Yeah, November, a hint, holidays. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But stay tuned to get to know exactly the date when we are going to be going live.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Till
thank you,
then,
everyone.
thanks, Michael. Xanthi,
Thank you.
always
Thank you
a
so much,
pleasure.
Michael.
Thank
Same
you.
pleasure,
And we're just
guys.
gonna
Yes.
and thanks again for everyone watching. Be well, be safe, and until then,
See you next time.
easy.
Is that a
Bye.
tilde?